August 25th. You reap what you sow. When I rolled out of bed the next morning, I had to call Brooke to break up. I had betrayed her trust, and I felt awful. I couldn't date her because I had cheated on her. I had ruined the trust in our relationship. I hadn't been in a relationship before where I was the disloyal one. This was the only girl I had ever cheated on in my life, and the guilt started sinking in. I didn't understand how guys could cheat on their girlfriends without feeling remorse. I was oozing with guilt. I wrote down how I was going to break up with her, like a script. I didn't want to choose the wrong words and make a bad situation worse. I wanted to make it quick and painless. This would reduce the amount of sobbing I'd have to endure. I was such a scumbag. When I picked up the phone, my heart started racing. The moment she heard my voice, she asked, "What's wrong?" I told her that we had to break up. She knew the only reason I would be doing that is if I had cheated on her. I continued explaining myself. I made a stupid decision last night. I didn't want to lie on top of being a cheater, and I was perhaps a little too honest. I told her that she was extremely important to me, and I still loved her. I had made a stupid decision, and because of that, it would be best if we didn't date anymore. I reminded her that we shared a wonderful summer of love, and nothing would ever change that. She couldn't stop crying, and the conversation began to drag on. My softer side almost got suckered into salvaging the relationship. I kept to the script, and we broke up. By the end of the conversation, I had managed to give her some sense of closure. I felt remorseful for breaking Brooke's heart, but it was better than cheating on her again. When we were done talking, I sat quietly alone in my dorm room. My roommate was in class, or off with the other dwarves mining for gold. Either way, he was out of my hair while I sat there reflecting. I debated whether or not I had the balls to smoke weed in my dorm room before finally saying, "Fuck it." I made a spoof and opened my window. A spoof in the cannabis world is not a comedy parody. It's when you shove dryer sheets in a toilet paper roll and blow weed smoke through it. A person can eliminate a lot of the odor by blowing their smoke through a spoof and then out a window. I started blazing hard in my room. When I was nice and right, I sat back in my computer chair. I took my first relaxed breath as a free single man. It had just set in. Now I could make out with anyone I wanted to, without repercussions. I was truly free of the constraints of parents, authority, and girlfriends. I was excited to make out with Lauren again, maybe with less of a cigarette taste, and now that I could do it guilt-free. I rolled a blunt and walked down to Lauren's room to ask her if she wanted to hang out. When I got to her room, I knocked on the door. There was no answer. After a few moments, I could hear people laughing inside the room. "Hold on!" someone shouted. I waited patiently at the door, concealing the blunt in my hand. Lauren answered the door, wearing only a t-shirt. She looked like she had been having sex. She had a huge smile on her face, and she was glowing. I asked her if she was busy, knowing full well that she was with someone. This way she could say yes, and I could go back to my room. To my surprise, she invited me in. I said, "No, it's okay. I'll just talk to you later." She must have noticed that I was uncomfortable. She grabbed my hand and pulled me into her room. I saw Terrell in her bed and waved. He had the same glow that Lauren had. Terrell casually said, "Hey, what's up, dude?" I searched for a place that would be untouched by their sexual endeavors. I sat on her roommate's computer chair. We sat awkwardly talking for a moment, and then I decided to be the better man. I asked Lauren and Terrell if they wanted to have an after-sex blunt session. They both looked at one another, and then nodded at me. I spun around and I played on a roommate's computer while they put their clothes on. The situation taught me not to throw away a relationship on an easy hookup. I was disappointed in myself. Lauren and I weren't dating, so I couldn't be upset at her. We could still be friends, but I decided I should spend less time with her and Terrell. I realized that I needed to continue making new friends and start expanding my social circle a little more. Everything was still cool between us. Lauren was just one of many girls on campus. I just hoped that she didn't suck anyone off before we made out. When they were clothed, we left on our last country drive together. When I got back and got into the elevator, I bumped into a guy that looked like an undercover cop. I reeked of weed and was paranoid. I wanted out, but the automatic door is shut. I gave him a quick head nod to symbolize a hello. I hit the button for my floor and asked him, "What floor are you going to?" He said, "The fourth, same as you." My paranoia skyrocketed. I avoided conversation with him by looking at my ratty old shoes. When the elevator doors opened, I power walked towards my room. When I got to my room and looked back, the guy was walking down the hallway towards me. I acted casual while trying to unlock my door, but I couldn't get the key in. It was like a scene from a horror movie, except the main character is just really high. I turned to see him unlocking the door to the room beside mine. Our rooms were separated by a hallway that led to an emergency exit stairwell. Not only did he look like a goddamn cop, but he lived beside me too. I thanked God that I had the very last room on the floor and that it didn't have a shared bathroom suite. I don't know if I would be able to handle sharing a bathroom with someone I immediately detested. I already had a roommate for that. It seemed like the first week of school had flown by. Every day had been so action-packed that it trumped the previous one. My journal was overflowing with stories I thought were important. So much had happened to me already, and it was still early in the day. I hadn't even prepared myself for class. I readied myself and started my day. When it was time for my last class, University 100, I needed a pick-me-up because I had smoked so much weed earlier in the day. I invited Paul to come by, and we shared some weed before class. We took every precaution not to get busted. Wet towels at the door, fans in the window, and we blew the smoke through my spoof. Since the class was convened in the fourth floor's quiet lounge, we were able to get high and walk into class less than 100 feet away. I was starting to share so much weed that I would soon be running out myself. I told Paul that I was running low on weed, and after class, he introduced me to Kirk. Kirk lived on the same floor as us and sold weed. I was happy that I was finally meeting some like-minded people. Kirk and I turned out to have a lot in common with one another. I spent the rest of the day and night partying with Kirk and a bunch of his friends off campus.